Hi folks, in today's video I'll be reviewing Guns and Gears for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Paizo was kind enough to send us this copy for review, and I've taken a chance to flip through it, read it, so here are my initial thoughts. I haven't, play tested any of this, but I think it is a pretty cool book. First thing that stood out to me was the artwork, the cover. While the artwork follows the Paizo kind of traditional art style, you will notice that the cover and spine, as well as the border around the pages, is a little different. It's got these kind of gear and jewel elements in it that I like because it kind of makes the book stand out a little bit. And actually, after filming the Secrets of Magic review, I did hear that it was kind of purposely done with a different spine look to it so that it stands out from essentially more of the core books. While there are 5 chapters to this book, there are kind of 3 sections that I'm going to talk about. The gear section, the gun section, and then the rotating gear. Now, at the beginning of the book, it does introduce that these were very purposely kind of grouped this way so that it's a lot easier for the game master to kind of decide what technology is going to be in their world, whether you're running a game in Galorian or you're running a completely homebrew. By breaking it up into these sections, it makes it a little bit easier to say, there's black powder, but there's not steam power, or there's clockworks, but there's not guns, or saying there's everything. It makes it a lot easier, so you're not having to kind of jump around a lot in the book. It's a little bit more grouped in a way that is easier for the game master to reference, and I'm sure also going to be easier for players to reference. All right, starting off with the gears section. This focuses on 3 kind of different technologies. So there's clockwork, there's stasis, which is essentially electricity, and then steam powered. Also, this introduces the Inventor class and the Automatons. I know the Inventor class is something that a lot of folks have been looking forward to. If you watch the Rise of the Runelords game that I'm in, Malvolo is an inventor, and I know Michael has been using the playtest rules and is now looking forward to incorporating the now official rules for 2nd edition. But this class is focused on their inventions. They can either make armor, a weapon, or a construct, and then through various means level those things up. I think actually the leveling up for this class makes maybe the most sense because as you're learning, as you're tinkering with your construct, you kind of figure out and unlock new abilities. And the Automaton is a new ancestry that you can play, which is a living soul in a construct's body. It's not a construct, and I like how the rules are written that most of the rules for constructs don't apply because it is a living thing. And these are also interesting because they're also not quite like cyborgs or anything like that. It is a kind of magically created construct with this soul. And there are a number of different kind of base builds that you can use with the automaton. As usual, there are a whole bunch of different backgrounds that are related to all of the gear and clockwork elements, steam power that are introduced in this section of the book. My particular favorite is the saved by clockwork. So that's somebody who has lost a limb, or perhaps they have a clockwork powered heart, that they can either know what their previous life was, or they woke up with this and don't remember their life at all. I think that's a pretty cool background idea right there, and can see some cool stories. It is a rare background. They do introduce that. So, maybe not the most common, but could be fun, so ask your game master. And then there are also new archetypes that kind of tie in elements of the Inventor that make it easy to add that to another class. So with that, you've got the Overwatch, you've got the Inventor, the Sterling Dynamo, which is clockwork prosthetics, the Trapmaster, Trick Driver, and Vehicle Mechanic. Because also in this section, it introduces a whole bunch of clockwork and steam-powered vehicles. The next chapter is gear equipment. So this is introducing all of the different weapons, the combat gear, the gadgets, siege weapons, vehicles, all of that stuff that is related to these clockwork, stasis, and steam-powered technology. A new thing that's introduced in the combat gear is the repeating trait for a weapon. So that's the idea that you can have essentially magazines that you can load into whatever like crossbow you're using. They're for specific weapons that will fire a certain number of rounds before needing to be reloaded. The drawback is that reloading that magazine does take a few extra actions. So I think that's a good way of kind of balancing out that idea of like having a automatic crossbow. There's also a number of really cool new tech in the combat gear. I especially like the wind-up wings, which are things you can add to a thrown item that can either help it like maneuver around obstacles, so it's like a homing missile, or it will come back to you and like fly the dagger so you can throw a dagger at somebody and then it flies back to you. Gadgets get introduced the idea of consumable technology, so little things that inventors definitely can use a little bit more easily, but anyone, any class can use, and they have, you know, that one-time use to them. A lot of these do have a bit of a like 007 spy feel to them, which is fun. I, you know, can see an inventor class having just a ball making a bunch of these. The next thing that gets introduced are siege weapons. This was something I wasn't really expecting to see in this book, and honestly, it kind of, not sure how much this section is going to get used. It seems like a little bit maybe more of a niche section, because while it does give you all of the stats for the siege weapons, to my knowledge, I haven't seen kind of stats for running or a guide to running like the bigger battles where you might be using these siege weapons, or seeing kind of what the defensive mechanisms might be. So maybe that's a hint at a future project that Paizo's putting out. We will have to see. But if you are interested in that, they're in there. And then we get into the snares and hazards. Again, these are just kind of the technological variations on various snares and hazards. Nothing in this really stood out to me as particularly cool or interesting, but nice to see in the book. The Stasi Tech, this was a cool section, but I was a little disappointed that there were only like a couple of things in this section. It seemed like maybe laying the groundwork for potential future things, but not really diving really deep into this. Granted, this was kind of presented as the least common of the technology, so this is like electrical technology. How many times can I say technology? There's a nice variety of vehicles, all the way from a automatic cyclo all the way to a clockwork castle, like think Howl's Moving Castle type thing. Yeah, there's a vehicle like that. I particularly like the Clunker Junker, which is a vehicle favored by goblins built out of junk that has a tendency to malfunction in fun, interesting ways. So yeah, I liked the nice variety of vehicles they provided, and that kind of lends itself well into like if you want to take the trick driver archetype or the mechanic. And then the last bit in this section is the mobility devices. This offers a nice variety of different kinds of wheelchairs for your characters to potentially use. And yes, if you look closely at the additional writers, you'll notice Sarah Thompson's name. She helped Paizo with developing this section of the book. So I just think that's great, seeing a little bit more representation and accessibility in gaming. Special thanks goes out to all of our patrons, especially Alicia. If you want to help support our channel, you can head on over to patreon.com and check out the perks of being a patron. All right, let's get back to this review. The next big section is the guns section. So this introduces all things gunpowder powered. Now, the first thing that came to mind was, how are they going to balance guns with like crossbows and more traditional fantasy weapons? So it's not just like, well, everybody's going to get guns now because they're way overpowered. So the way that they did this is approaching most weapons as kind of the early forms of guns, so they're a little less reliable, maybe take a little bit longer to load. There is the potential for them to be more lethal, but you get that trade-off of yes, if you do critical hit on this, you have the potential for it to do a lot more damage because it essentially, flavor-wise, hits a vital organ. But the likelihood of it even hitting is lower because they are less of an accurate weapon. So while I haven't playtested this, it seems like it does kind of balance out with those other weapon choices. The main thing in this section is the Gunslinger Clasp, and there are a number of different subclasses from, the Drifter that uses a gun along with a more traditional weapon like, maybe a rapier or a cutlass. You've got the Sniper, which is accuracy and distance focused, and then you've got the Vanguard, which carries a much heavier weapon that has a wider range of shot. Now, the backgrounds in this section, while a number of them do have directly to do with guns, there also were a number that didn't, but they definitely had either a bit of a Western or more pirate feel, which makes sense because if you want to run a homebrew campaign that has guns in it, those are two kind of fantasy flavors that would definitely have guns, whether it's a fantasy Western or fantasy pirates. So that introduces having to do with gunpowder, so a number of explosive things, but also things like the Undertaker. That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with guns, but there's almost always an Undertaker in the Westerns. And then the Archetypes incorporate a number of different gun-related things, but also other things related to gunpowder, such as fireworks and a demolitionist. So that's I could see a fun combo, especially like an Inventor demolitionist. Ooh, that would be a fun... Or an Inventor and firework. Ooh. Next up is the guns equipment. So this has all of your guns, all of your gunpowder stuff. So it's broken down into 5 different categories. You have the classic firearms, the fantasy firearms, which provides a variety of more odd guns, like a petrification cannon, which is made from a taxidermied basilisk, or also a cane pistol. There's a pistol and a cane. Then the third group is the ammunition. So you have basic ammunition as well as specialty ammunition. Then there's black powder siege weapons. Again, very similar to the earlier siege weapons area, but this time focusing on anything black powder. And then the tools and accessories. Now, within this, there are a number of new weapon traits, most notably the capacity, double barrel, fatal aim, and kickback. Also, repeating appears again, and I do appreciate that they included the rules for repeating here as well so that you don't have to reference the other section. I think that just makes it easier if you are playing a game that only has guns that doesn't have gears. You don't have to worry about flipping back and forth. And then the final section of the book is the rotating gears, and this provides a lot of various information on the origin of these different technologies, where they are in the world, a little bit about those cultures and those locations, and also some explanations for why this technology has not spread throughout the world, whether it is rare, it relies on specific resources, or has been heavily kept a secret in that society. So I think that's a good section if you are wanting to run a game in the kind of traditional Galorian setting that Pathfinder takes place in. You can definitely draw from that. If you're running a homebrew, you may not use that section quite as much, but you might find some inspiration for your own homebrew world in that section. I think this book adds a lot more options, especially if you are wanting to create a homebrew world in Pathfinder that expands it beyond just the traditional high fantasy that Pathfinder tends to run in. You can definitely have a little bit more of a steampunk type of game, a Western, a pirate setting, maybe a little bit of... there are even some elements in here that I think could work in maybe a little bit of a noir type setting. So I think that this book, while it does just kind of introduce these 2 main ideas, it allows for a lot more variety within your game, Pathfinder already allowed for a lot of variety, so this is just even more. All right, so those are my initial thoughts on the Guns and Gears book for Paizo. The hardback is about $50. The PDF is less expensive. I'll put the price somewhere. And I'll make sure that there's a link to the Paizo's site so you can check it out if you want to pick up a copy of your own. Have you picked up the copy of Guns and Gears, or has this been something you've been looking forward to? I would love to know what your thoughts are on it down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, I hope you give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe because we make videos here every week all about tabletop RPGs and our other geeky interests. All right, I'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye! Paizo was kind enough to send... Paizo was kind enough to send... Words? Words. Paizo was kind...